In a new series that I'm introducing here on my channel, we're going to be talking about some of the best watches in different price ranges. Today we're going to be talking about the $100 price range, $200 price range, $300 price range, and then $500 price range. Each one of the watches that we'll be talking about today fall within one of those price ranges or below. So if we're talking about a $50 watch, it's going to be in that $100 price range, although it is a sub $100 watch. Now, I know there's going to be plenty of other watches that I could have included in this video, so I'm going to be doing subsequent videos, and I would like to hear what you guys have to say. So tell me down below in the comment section, what would you choose at $100, $200, $300, and $500? I want to know the watches that you would choose. Without further ado, let's start with the $100 category. The $100 category should be the most affordable watches out there. Some of the watches that we're talking about here fall well below $100. There are some better than others, and some of them are cheaper on the secondary market, so their retail price is slightly higher than $100, but they are really easy to get under $100. So I'm going to start with my first pick. When you're talking about sub $100 watches, it's the Casio D'Oro. Casio D'Oro is a dive watch. It gets 200 meters of water resistance. It's actually pretty good looking. It's a very straightforward dive watch. It's $50 on a strap. I think they actually retail for slightly higher than that, but you can get these on Amazon all day long for around $50. And they're quartz. They're reliable and they're straightforward. They're actually pretty good looking dive watch with 200 meters of water resistance, which is kind of surprising considering that it only costs $50. One of the watches that I really got into when I started getting into affordable watches was the Casio AE 1200. Now you can see a theme here. There are a few Casios in this price range that I'm going to talk about because they are so affordable. But the watch we're talking about now is that World Timer. It has a little map on the dial. It's a square shape. These are usually very affordable. You can get them on a bracelet under $50, well under $50, and you can get them on a strap. I've modded a few of these to actually oil fill them, but they are very iconic watches. There's tons of functionality, and I really do think these are very good looking watches for the money. Anything with a little map on the dial just looks cool, and especially when they cost around 30 bucks. However, out of all the watches that I've mentioned here, I'm going to talk about Timex, and I would say Timex is probably my favorite affordable watch when you're talking about watches sub $100. The Expedition collection has a number of watches that are excellent for around $60, depending on which one you're talking about. The Scout is an amazing bargain that you can buy directly from Timex for around $63, but if you go to places like Amazon, you can get them for around $40 and sometimes even less than that. If you want to buy one used, you can get them for a very good price. These usually have resin cases. However, they do make metal versions. Usually with those resin versions, you're getting a metal crown and a metal case back. These do get mineral crystals. Of course, at this price point, you can't expect all the bells and whistles, but these are very good looking, very functional watches that will last a long time. They also make an Arcadia edition, which gets a rotating bezel and 100 meters of water resistance. So this looks even more expensive. And again, these are around that $60 price point. So everything here well under $100, but really great watches. Also, the Ironman, recently Huckberry and Timex teamed up on a re-edition of the original Ironman. Those sell for under $100 as well, and they're pretty iconic for a watch that costs under $100. For the sub $100 category, I have mainly focused on Casio and Timex because I think that Casio and Timex offer a ton of value under $100. The Casio Edifice, which you can get for under $100, is an incredibly good looking watch. That's a bracelet that's integrated some interesting dials and a sapphire crystal. There's also the 5600 Casio G-Shock, which is an icon in and of itself. And again, another very affordable watch. So that's the reason why I've focused on those two brands. There are plenty of brands that have watches under $100. Seiko, Orient are a couple that come to mind as well. but I wanted to focus in on those two brands. I will bring up other brands later on in another video. But tell me some of the watches, some of the brands that you would have included in the $100 category down below. Now we're getting into the $200 category. There are a lot of watches that we could talk about here as well, but I'm going to start with the Orient Komatsu, which is an automatic watch with a sapphire crystal and 200 meters of water resistance. I own one of these watches. I've actually never made a video about it. It's a very affordable dive watch that's also pretty good looking. They're not ugly watches by any means. They're good looking watches that are pretty well made. You know, the bracelets aren't all that great. The straps are okay, but you could upgrade some of these items if you really wanted to. The watch is a workhorse for $200 for a very nicely made watch that gets 200 meters of water resistance. Speaking of sapphire crystals, recently, one of my favorite brands, Timex, started using sapphire crystals on a lot of their watches. They came out with some pretty cool dive watches recently called the Deep Water Reef 200. They made a quartz version. It gets a textured dial, a sapphire crystal, and a case that's inspired by 1970s divers. This is just a really good looking watch that's very straightforward. It's really well made. It gets a really nice strap for around $200. These come in just under $200, so it's really right under that $200 mark, but you can get these on sale. They haven't really gone on sale yet, but usually Timex put all of their watches on sale at some point, and these will eventually go on sale, but they do fall under that $200 price point, but eventually you could probably get them even cheaper. So keeping in the family here, I'm going to mention two more Timexes. The Q Timex, which is very affordable, comes in a bunch of different variants. They make GMTs, chronographs. They're just good looking, very 1970s inspired. I love the bracelets that they put on these watches. You get a rotating bezel and a very straightforward design that kind of looks like a Rolex in some ways, but it has its own design at the same time. These are Q Timex, so they are quartz, but they are very good looking watches and look a lot more expensive than they actually are. Speaking of looking more expensive than it actually is, the Marlin chronograph is a gorgeous chronograph that comes in a couple of different colors now, and it is under $200. When you think about it, it's pretty astonishing that such a beautiful chronograph comes in under $200. I would say this is probably one of the best affordable chronographs that money can buy based on looks. Really, the movement here is just a quartz movement. It's nothing too special, but this is a very good looking watch that I think everybody should check out. It's affordable and incredibly good looking. They've made a moon phase version. I don't love that one that much. It's the straightforward chronograph with a beautiful layout. They make a panda dial. It's just awesome. I really love these watches. Another watch that you can get for under $200 that I think is pretty iconic is the Tissot PRX in quartz. It usually retails for around $375, but they have flooded the market with these, and there are a lot of these available on the secondary market. Places like Joma Shop sell them for around $200. Sometimes they come in at around $199, just under $200. Sometimes they're a little bit more than that, but they come in at around that $200 price point, and they are a bargain for that price. They're really nicely finished. You get a brush dial on these, not as dynamic, of course, as the automatic versions, the Powermatic 80s. Very good looking watches, integrated bracelets, again, inspired by the 70s, very thin, just good looking watches. I highly recommend the Tissot PRX to a lot of people who are starting out collecting, or if you just want something that's affordable and really easy to use and very comfortable. It's a great watch. I highly recommend it. And then, of course, in this $200 price range, there are Seiko 5 Sports that are available, sometimes in that around $200 price point, just under $200, and Casio G-Shocks. There are plenty of G-Shocks that are available sub $200. Brand new from Casio. All you have to do is check their website. There are plenty of G-Shocks available. Now we're getting into that $300 price point, and this opens it up to a lot more watches. Of course, there's G-Shocks in this category as well. That sub $300 G-Shock category is huge. There are plenty of watches here. You can get a Casio for sub $300, actually pretty close to that $200 price point as well. There are plenty of different models and different styles and materials that you can get. Those are great watches. And then, of course, Seiko 5. Seiko 5 falls very safely between that $200 and $300 price range. You can get them very easily. The Seiko 5 Sports, it doesn't get a sapphire crystal, but I think it's a really good looking watch based on the SKX, which is of course an icon. Really great watches from Seiko at this price point. There are, of course, a lot of used Seikos that you can get at this price point as well. I don't often talk about dress watches here on my channel, but the Orient Bambino falls here. The Marlin from Timex, two really great iconic dress watches that are also automatic and affordable or hand wound. Just good looking, straightforward dials on these, very vintage inspired, and of course, very affordable. However, in this category, there really are 4 brands that come to mind for me in this category that I often recommend. One of them is Citizen, like the Suartto, which comes in under $200, an ultra thin, solar powered eco drive that just looks good. It has a textured dial. It's super thin, around 5 millimeters thick, and they cost under $300. They're actually on sale on their website right now. There is also on the Citizen website right now in the Pro Dive section. So you're talking about a 200-meter dive watch that's ISO certified from Citizen, from a major brand that costs under $300. That is an incredible price for a very iconic dive watch that is extremely durable. It's eco drive, so it is solar powered, powered by any light. Great watches for under $300. If you're talking about watches that cost under $300, the brand San Martin needs to be brought up because they sell watches that cost under $300 that are extremely well made. All of their watches feature things like screwed links, solid end links, sapphire crystals, automatic movements, and of course on-the-fly micro adjust for watches that cost around $250. They make their own designs as well. Some of them aren't so great. Some of them are pretty good. They make a lot of homages and clomages, whatever you want to call them, but they all cost under around that $300 price point. Some are a little bit more expensive, but most are under that $300 price point, and they are excellent watches in quality for the price. Another brand that I'd have to bring up when I'm talking about watches that cost under $300, if someone was asking me, I would have to tell them about Islander watches. Islander watches, Mark from Islander Watches, makes some really amazing watches for a very affordable price. I actually looked at their website for a specific watch to list here to tell you about. They have an NH34 powered GMT on their website right now with a hobnail dial that costs under $300. Actually comes in at $250. It gets a sapphire crystal, screwed links, solid end links. It gets a milled clasp, and it's $250. By the way, that also gets 200 meters of water resistance. So this is a really specced out watch for only $250. That is pretty incredible. When you're in this range, this price range, sub $300, Timex has tons of watches on their website. Things like the Marlin Jet come to mind, which is an incredibly good looking, very original watch from Timex that is automatic. And it gets an incredible bespoke dial, bespoke crystal, just a watch that you've never seen from any other brand for under $300. It's incredibly good looking. They recently came out with a 270th anniversary edition that was limited to 270 pieces, and it sold out in about a minute. That's because these are very cool watches, and now those are reselling on places like eBay for around $600. So that tells you something. These are cool watches that people want. They're also really good looking. And last in this category, I have to mention that there are plenty of watches from micro brands like Van Banner, Phoebus, Zelos. There are plenty of watches from those brands that they offer at around that $300 price point. Most of the time just under $300. However, that is becoming less and less of a thing as watches become more and more expensive. Inflation and the cost of components have been a little bit rough on some micro brands, so their prices have slightly increased. However, there are still brands out there offering incredible values in the micro brand space. Now we're in the $500 space, and there are a lot of watches here that I could talk about. So I know you guys have some examples that maybe I'm not including in my list here. I would like you to add comments down below. Again, please add comments down below. Of course, don't forget to like and subscribe, but add some comments down below on what you think I should have included in this list as well. I will be making subsequent lists in the future, so I would love to include some of the watches that you suggest down in the comments. So I'm going to start with the Tissot PRX Powermatic 80. One of the most obvious watches in this category. It's a watch that retails for much more, around $750. However, you can get these on the secondary market, brand new from places like Joma Shop for around $500. It's automatic. It gets an 80-hour power reserve. It gets a hobnail dial, depending on the version that you're getting. It gets a sapphire crystal and a beautiful bracelet. These are somewhat iconic. They only came out not that long ago, just a few years ago. However, they're a remake of a 1970s model that no one really ever knew about. That doesn't mean anything. These have become an icon in their own right over a very short period of time. They're sort of the darling of the watch collector world. They're affordable and good-looking integrated bracelet watches. Talking about good-looking, affordable, and well-made, the Citizen Ciosa has really exploded into this sub $500 space with some pretty incredible watches. Specifically, the small seconds version of the Ciosa, I think, is fantastic. And this watch sells for under $500. You're getting a textured dial, sapphire crystal, that's small seconds. They've improved the bracelet on this version. The other versions are even cheaper. The Ciosas with the candy dials, all the different colors. But I think this one is the choice if you're going for a Ciosa, because this is definitely the best looking out of the bunch. And the Ciosa is a very good looking watch. A lot of people compared it to the Rolex OP when it first came out. The textured dials took it to a completely new level. Definitely check these watches out. Something a little bit different, something a little bit off the beaten path from the normal Gerald Genta inspired integrated bracelet watch. Check out the Ciosa. In this category, you're not going to find what you're going to find in the next watch on this list in many other watches. I'm talking about the Bulova Lunar Pilot. Something that has a history, something that has a story behind it. The Lunar Pilot was used on the moon when a Speedmaster failed, and Dave Scott, an astronaut, had to actually use a watch that he had with him personally. And that was a Bulova Lunar Pilot. He wore it on the moon during an extravehicular activity. So basically, he was driving a rover and he had this watch on his wrist. Bulova didn't know about it. Really, NASA knew about it, but didn't tell the story. But then when eventually this information came out, it made the watch famous. Bulova reissued it in 45 millimeters. Now it's available in 43 millimeters. It's pretty incredible. And I think that people should definitely check this watch out. If you're interested in something like a Speedmaster, check out the Bulova Lunar Pilot. If you don't want to spend the extra money, these are incredibly iconic watches and historic watches for a very good price. And again, these sell for under $500 on a regular basis. I've brought up Timex here a number of times. I've actually brought up the Deepwater Reef a number of times. The titanium version falls under $500. I highly recommend that dive watch with a sapphire crystal and automatic movement. However, the watch that I'm going to talk about is the Expedition North in titanium with an automatic movement. It's a GMT, the NH34. It gets 200 meters of water resistance. It kind of looks like a Tudor Black Bay Pro. That's what a lot of people are saying. And I definitely don't think that's a bad thing. All in all, a really good looking watch for a very good price. These do retail higher than $500, but I was able to buy one for under $500 directly from Timex using a discount code, which are usually readily available. So I highly recommend doing that. If you want one of these watches, they're great. Earlier, I mentioned the Citizen Promaster Eco Drive dive watch. Now we're going to talk about the automatic version, which of course falls under $500. It's automatic. It gets a sapphire crystal. You can get a bracelet or a strap, and again, under $500. ISO certified with 200 meters of water resistance. These are good looking watches that come in a bunch of different colors. They even make some textured dials. I highly recommend checking these out. If you want something that is really the true replacement of the Seiko SKX, check out the Citizen Promaster Dive Automatic. And by the way, the SKX never offered a sapphire crystal, and of course the Promaster does, which is pretty amazing. I will give another mention here to the Citizen Zenshin. I bring them up all the time. However, they have recently gone on sale on the Citizen website. A lot of the chronographs have gone under $500. The automatics and the Eco Drive, the time only, those have actually fallen under $500 as well. I highly recommend the Zenshin because it's an integrated bracelet watch in super titanium. They get textured dials, and they're just good looking watches for the money. So that's why I always recommend them in videos like this. However, there is another watch that I definitely would recommend in this $500 price point. It's the Bulova Jetstar Precisionist. This is a watch that gets an ultra smooth sweep second hand because of its precisionist movement. It's sort of like a Grand Seiko spring drive on the cheap. These are good looking watches that are kind of like a Rolex OP. You get a very straightforward looking sports watch. However, that precisionist movement takes it to a new level. You get an incredible sweep on that seconds hand. It's better than what you would get from a Seiko high beat. So the sweep second on this watch sits somewhere between a Grand Seiko high beat and a spring drive. That is not a bad territory to live in, and it's affordable. You can get these for under $500, and it looks like a much more expensive watch. And the last two watches on this list are two watches that I bring up here very often. The first one is the Tissot C-Star 1000, a watch that you can get in 43 millimeters, 46 millimeters, 40 millimeters. They make GMTs. They make all different versions of this in all different sizes, but usually you can get them for around $500, depending on the version that you're looking at. Sometimes they're a little bit more expensive, but a lot of the time they fall within that $500 and below range. These are powered by a Powermatic 80. You get a sapphire crystal, a bracelet on here. The bracelets are a little blingy. You have some polish on there. For a dive watch, I don't really love that, but all in all, these are fantastic watches for a great value, especially since you're getting that Powermatic 80. It really is one of those watches that can't be beat. I always recommend this watch for people who are looking for an affordable diver. And last but not least is the Bulova Hack, the watch that won World War II. It's a field watch that is very affordable. Again, these sometimes even fall below $300. It's an incredible alternative to watches like the Hamilton Khaki, which, by the way, also falls in this price range sometimes. So you can definitely consider that as well. But the Hack is very affordable and it's also very historic. I highly recommend the Bulova Hack for someone who's looking for a military-inspired watch that has actual history in the military, in World War II, in combat. It's just a cool watch with a great history. Tell me what you guys think down in the comments below about the lists that I have made here today. There are 4 different lists, 100, 200, 300, and 500. Tell me down below your picks in those price ranges. I want to hear from you guys. Like I said, I'll make more of these videos. I'm going to pick higher price ranges next time. I think it actually is easier in the higher price ranges because there's a lot more variety. When you get into those $100, that sub $100 price range is really tough. There are a lot of watches out there, but not a lot of them are great, because I wanted to talk about great watches in these price ranges. So tell me what you guys think down in the comments below. Please also don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon. It is super helpful for the channel and I very much appreciate it. Anyway guys, thank you for logging on. Thank you for watching this video. I will catch you guys in the next video.